Good morning, everybody. Well, good news on the vaccination front. The number of vaccinations in this city continues to climb, and thank God for that. Right now, we are almost at 3.5 million vaccinations since the beginning of our effort. The official number as of this morning, 3,455,877 vaccinations. We're going to, I think, likely surpass 3.5 million in the course of this day. And this is what it's all about, getting more and more New Yorkers vaccinated. We're seeing a great response out there. More and more people want to be vaccinated. There's less hesitancy, even though there's some for sure, there's less. And more sites around the city. And these ideas go together. The more sites you have, the more you get to the grassroots with the vaccination effort, the more community organizations and community leaders are involved, the more people trust the vaccine and are ready to come forward and get vaccinated themselves. And that's good for all of us because we need to hit our goal, 5 million New Yorkers fully vaccinated by June. That is crucial to a recovery for all of us, that we get as many people vaccinated as possible, as quickly as possible. So one of the things we're focused on is working with houses of worship. Obviously, people have a deep sense of connection to the houses of worship in their lives, in their communities. And we have pop-up vaccination sites at a number of houses of worship. We've been doing this over the last few weeks. We've found really great success and great efforts by the faith communities to reach out to their congregations and get people to come in, really reaching people who previously hadn't heard the message about vaccination or hadn't got all the answers they wanted. Now they're getting those answers and they're coming forward. So this week, we'll have vaccination sites at Leviticus Church of God in Queens, at the Christian Cultural Center in Brooklyn, Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Brooklyn, and First Corinthian Baptist Church in Manhattan. And we're going to continue to expand this effort across different faiths, different houses of worship, because it's working. This is a key part of our grassroots effort, in addition to all the other things we're doing, folks going door to door, signing up seniors for vaccine, the many grassroots efforts that are working. You're going to see a lot more of it in the weeks ahead. Okay, now, when we talk about recovery for all of us, when we talk about bringing this city back strong and bringing it back better and bringing it back fairer, well, we got to talk about our children. We got to talk about how to do right by our kids, how to give them the future they deserve, how to help families, how to help working people who were struggling before the pandemic and have dealt with so much in this last year and are going to be dealing with a lot in the years ahead as we recover. Well, I'll tell you something, what I learned a long time ago. If you want to help a working family, give them free early childhood education. We learned this with Pre-K for All, a game changer for so many families. Knowing that early childhood education would be there for their child for free, it would be accessible, it would be easy, there would be no question whether it would be there for them, it would be stress-free. That's the model we created with Pre-K for All. It has become a national model. I am thrilled to hear that President Biden is thinking of including Pre-K for All as part of his next recovery plan, because this is something that would have a huge impact for this country. If all over America, every child could start at the same starting line, if every working parent knew they didn't have to stress over where their child would be and how they'd pay for it, if their child would get a good start in life. This has worked in New York City. And it worked because we made it something for everyone. And today I am really pleased to say that our next great wave of early child education, 3K, we started 3K a few years ago. We started in just a few districts. We started where there was some of the greatest need in New York City, in the South Bronx and in Brownsville. We said, we're going to build this out. One day our dream was that 3K, early child education for our 3-year-olds, could follow the same path as Pre-K. One day, we said, the day will come when 3K is in every district in New York City, 32 school districts. We dreamed that one day we could be able to have 3K in all of them. Well, today the dream comes true. Today we announce that as of this coming September 2021, 3K will be in every one of our 32 school districts in New York City. This is going to be a huge expansion. We're adding for September 16,500 3K seats, and that will bring the total to over 40,000. So parents, if you have a 3-year-old who will qualify for these 3K seats in September, whichever district you're in, you'll be able to apply. Now, we don't have all the seats we want yet for September, but we will be in every single district, and we'll be able to keep building from there. And this is a huge step to the day when 3K becomes a fully universal right in New York City, just as pre-K is today. And it's going to make the lives of parents and families so much better. I always say when you take the two together, 3K and pre-K, 2 full years of high quality, free early childhood education, you change the life of a child, you change the trajectory of a family forever. And we saw that this morning, incredible, in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, at Phil's Daycare Center. What an amazing place. I know the chancellor, who will speak as an educator and as a mom, was as moved as I was. These kids, little kids, telling us the words that they could say in Spanish, going over the addition they had learned, the mathematics they had learned, just spontaneously wanting to tell us about everything they learned. And there was so much energy and so much joy. And these are, this is what happens when 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds have a chance. Their minds are incredibly ready to learn, and extraordinary things happen. So we saw it this morning, and this is the shape of things to come. And here to talk to you about the expansion of 3K to every district in New York City, our Chancellor, Misha Ross Porter.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is absolutely a big deal, expanding 3K for all citywide across all 32 school districts. It couldn't come at a better time, as New York City turns the corner on this virus and we want to get out families back to work. What an amazing opportunity for so many of them. Early childhood programs are where it all begins, and I remember being in my own early childhood program at Edgemere Redfern Daycare in Far Rockaway, Queens, where my Aunt Brenda was my teacher, and I got my foundational grounding there. And I remember as a parent when Jordan started 3K at St. Mark's Pre-K in Harlem, and the amazing work the teachers did there for her. But it wasn't free, so this is a game changer for families today. Today at Phil's Academy in Brooklyn, Miss Abena, thank you so much for building an amazing school environment. And we have something in common. We come from a family of educators that have been building and working in schools forever. The mayor and I got to learn Spanish from Xavier and Madison. We got math lessons from Xavier and Madison. We also got to follow our shadow. And I'm going to have to tell Xavier I lost my sticker, but he made sure I got a heart before I left there this morning. But again, the best part is that it's going to be free, and it's going to save New York City families about $10,000 a year. And so we can put that in the college savings plan. This is important to so many communities. I remember when we started in District 7 in the South Bronx and what opportunities that provided for families. And I remember when I became superintendent of District 11 in the Bronx, the first thing I was able to do was open pre-K classrooms. And I want to thank Deputy Chancellor Wallach and Stephanie Crane and the team for making this happen. I'm so grateful to our early childhood providers for the way they continue to show up for our children every single day, and with such joy and love and compassion. And you saw it. You saw it across all of the young people's faces who were so excited about learning. And the parents, the look of hope and excitement as they brought their children into school this morning. And so this exciting time for expansion aligns with our plan to achieve pay parity for early childhood education teachers by fall 2021, a goal we are on track to reach. And as we look ahead to next year, I want to make sure I get this right. I encourage families who are interested to apply for 3K or pre-K at myschools.nyc or over the phone at 718-935-2009. These new programs will be coming online in the coming weeks, so you can learn more also at nyc.gov/pre-K. nyc.gov/3K. And I'm going to pass it back to the mayor, but we still want to know more about how the Gruffalo ended.
The Gruffalo.
The
yes.
Gruffalo.
I was very struck. We were in the middle of a story being read in the classroom, and then the Chancellor and I had to come here. So we're going to wonder for the rest of our lives
About
about this
the
story.
Ruffalo.
Chancellor, I do have my sticker. I want you to see. Okay, you got to take care of your sticker next time, okay? I also want to extend my thanks, as the Chancellor did, to Deputy Chancellor Josh Wallach and the entire team, everyone from the beginning, amazing people who worked on pre-K and then 3K over these last 8 years, incredibly dedicated people who built these programs, often at breathtaking speed, because we wanted to expand and expand quickly. And also reached out to communities all over the city to let parents know. It's been an incredible, incredible journey. Thank you to everyone. And I want you to hear now about what this means for a family in this city, what it means to have access to free, quality early childhood education. I'm going to turn to Lydia Vargas, and you should know that her son attended 3K last year, is enrolled in pre-K now. And Lydia is going to give you a sense of what it means to have this for her family. Lydia, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hi, everyone. My name is Lydia Vargas. I'm a mother of two. My son, Jacob, he is right now enrolled in the pre-K for all. It's located in the Bronx, and anyone who is a parent knows the nerve-wrackedness or the excitement it is to enroll your child in a program. And I'm so happy and thankful that this program was extremely, extremely great for our family. The program in our community was the perfect place for my son to get a head start in school. And the teachers and staff always go above and beyond to support us. Even when the pandemic hit, they got to work right away to communicate what was happening to the families and share resources we could use at home just to provide more information on what was going on. I remember sharing so many posts on the Class Dojo app of Jacob doing arts and crafts that the teacher provided over the app in Class Dojo. 1 year later, I am more than grateful than ever for this program. Jacob is able to attend pre-K 5 days per week, and he has so many friends from his 3K still with him today. It gives him something to look forward to each week, and I can't wait for the day that the little one, my 1-year-old son, is able to attend as well the pre-K program. Child care programs are so expensive nowadays. I was furloughed during the pandemic. Having access to this program, free program, may I mention, has meant the world to us as a family and other families that I know as well. 3K for All was created thinking not just for the students, not for the children, but as well as the parents and the family, and we're grateful for that. I can't imagine a better opportunity to give to my son a great education surrounded by people who love and care for him. And can't wait to enroll my 1-year-old in the school as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Excellent, Lydia. Thank you. Thank you for telling the story of your family. And I'm so happy for Jacob that
Thank
he's
you.
doing so well.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that your next child as well will have the chance. And this is the beauty of pre-K and 3K, what it does for families. And I want to just say, this is an amazing moment, and it's really been a team effort. Of course, we're able to now get back in the game with expanding 3K, in part because of the federal stimulus. So we're so thankful to President Biden, to Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, our entire delegation in the Congress for fighting for a stimulus that had a lot of focus on education. That's tremendously important. But also, the whole way through, we've gotten incredible support for pre-K and 3K from the state legislature, and especially from the city council. This was a huge endeavor from the beginning. For us to achieve it, we needed the help of the city council, not just in terms of the city budget alone, but for those of you who remember the beginning of pre-K and then 3K, we needed a lot of help community by community, identifying the locations, getting organizations, grassroots organizations to join in the effort. And the City Council played a central role from the beginning. So this expansion also has been something the City Council has been pushing for and has made very clear to the administration that they thought should be a priority as we plan ahead. And I'm very thankful for the City Council for that support and that firm commitment to 3K. I want you to hear from some of the council members who have been a part of this effort, who have fought for 3K for their communities and are here to celebrate the fact that it will be in every district. First, I want you to hear from Brooklyn, from someone who really fights for her community and particularly understands, as a mom herself, how important early childhood education is. Council member Lori Cumbo. Hold on. Are we having our traditional technical difficulties here, guys?
Sure. So I think with tax.
Hello?
There you go.
Here I am.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor de Blasio. How are you today?
I am feeling great because it's Universal 3K Day. So
Yay! And nobody could be happier. It's such an incredible opportunity. I'm home today. My son has a little bit of a cold, and so we are waiting for his COVID test to come back negative so that he can go back to school. So when these types of things happen, when daycare closes, the school has professional development days, I know firsthand it's impossible to work from home and to also raise your children at the same exact time. So universal pre-K for 3-year-olds, you probably hear him in the background, is critical because it's so important. I know when I enrolled my son in daycare and pre-K, the costs were between $1,500 on the low end to $2,200 to $2,500 on the high end. And that was just for daycare. I mean, it's more expensive to send your child to daycare than it is to college. So it's almost as if the savings that you would have created for a college education are spent almost on pre-K. So this is really critical. This is really important. Families simply cannot go back to work unless we have the support that we need to send our children to daycare. And this is a huge step in the right direction. And I certainly applaud Mayor de Blasio for his commitment to making sure that universal pre-K happens. It was great when it happened for UPK4, now UPK3. And we're going to keep pushing till we get UPK2 and all of that, because we certainly need it. And that'll be for the next mayor. But it's critical, and you've set a tremendous precedent. And for so many families, I just want to say, I know that you all have been so challenged with raising a family, going to work, fixing the meals, the laundry, cutting the fingernails and the toenails and ordering the books and trying to be like super parents. And I know we all had visions and dreams for our children, but help is on the way. And this is an incredible resource. My son will be going to UPK4 next year. So I'd like a rebate for UPK3 that I had to pay for, just teasing. But it is certainly an exciting idea. I know Ben Kalos, because Ben and I would talk so much about how expensive UPK is, and we would champion and fight because we were trying to get UPK3 for selfish reasons, but also for the entire city. And I thank you, Mayor de Blasio, for your support in this and for bringing it home. Thank you so much.
thank you. Really appreciate your, as always, energetic support, Lori. The only thing you do is energetic, and that's a compliment. And thank you for making so clear why this matters to so many families, and thank you for your crucial support for this. Now, I want to turn to another council member. He represents one of the districts in New York City where the demand has been greatest, where we have the most overcrowded schools, and where there is just an intense need for working parents, including a lot of struggling immigrant parents, to have more options for early childhood for their kids. I know he is a strong supporter of this 3K expansion. My pleasure to introduce from Queens, Council Member Francisco Moya.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you see that the great council member Lori Cumbo brings such energy this morning on such a great issue, but I want to take this opportunity, Mr. Mayor, to thank you for the wonderful work that you've done, how you've spearheaded, pre-K from the get-go. I remember this when I was in Albany and you were fighting to championing it and you made it a reality. And now we're seeing 3K for all. This is a great day for the children of New York City, especially now as we're seeing the reports showing that learning loss associated with the pandemic and the children being at risk of lacking the basic literacy skills by the time they reach the age of 10, which is prevalent among low-income families and communities of color. A family's income or immigration status should not determine a child's access to quality early education. With the launch of 3K for all in the remaining neighborhoods, including those in school districts 24 and District 30, we are prioritizing and investing in the neighborhoods disproportionately impacted by COVID. These neighborhoods are made up of working families, immigrant families, Black and Latino families, families who've lost wages, families with no childcare, families who have had to adjust to the virtual reality without adequate resources, all while dealing with the loss of loved ones. 3K for all means New York City is making access to early childhood education equitable, not just for people who could afford it. It means families can go back to work sooner, especially given the negative economic impact over the past year. It means children of lower socioeconomic status won't have to play catch up and will have a real opportunity early on to adjust to school and learn critical social and emotional skills. It means knocking down the language barrier for immigrant families whose children's first language is not English. This is a step forward in reducing the racial gap in education, and we are sending a message to our communities that we are invested in their families' future, and we are ensuring that their children have the resources necessary to put them on a path to success, no matter their background. We cannot risk stunting children's intellectual growth. The time is now because every child deserves a shot at success. And thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, for making this happen. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so kind of you, council member, and thank you for being such a strong supporter of pre-K and 3K in Albany and here. Thank you so much. And I want to hear from one more council member, and I will say this as a compliment. He has been slightly obsessed with the expansion of pre-K and 3K in his district. I appreciate that. I appreciate that he has brought immense energy to bear, and it's real interesting when council members come to you and they say, hey, there's something we really need to focus on. I need to talk to you about it. It's heartening to me where the thing that brings out the most passion is early childhood education. That has been true for Councilmember Ben Kalos. He has talked to me about this dozens and dozens of times over the year, and I'm really happy that we can have him join us on this day where this dream is finally being realized, and 3K will reach his district now. From Manhattan, Councilmember Ben Kalos.
Good morning. I'm Councilmember Ben Kalos. My daughter is 3 years old, and 3K for all is a lifeline that will make it easier for countless families like mine to stay in New York City and thrive. My family will be applying for 3K today. After this pandemic forced our children into isolation for a year, New York City parents will be relying on 3K for all to help our children catch up. Childcare on the Upper East Side starts at $30,000, and that's if you can get a seat. Few can afford this, and countless families have told me that childcare costs were the straw that broke the camel's back and forced them out. This was even before the pandemic. 3K for all is a game changer, giving every child the fair start that they deserve. Right here, I have a map of where we had planned 3K as of 2020 that I made when we launched a petition, and the areas in red still needed it. If you counted, that's half the school districts in New York City and about 2/5 by population and land mass. Today's announcement turns its entire map blue, and Mayor de Blasio, this petition is coming down today. Childcare weighs heavily on couples as they plan for a family. Can they afford childcare? If not, can they afford for one parent to take time off? How long will that gap be? Will their career ever recover from that gap? Which parent will that be? Now, to be honest, in heterosexual couples or with single parents, that parent is most often a woman. 3K and pre-K, the times the family must struggle to find childcare from 5 years down to 3 years, which is a big help and two big steps in the right directions. Countless families, including mine, are breathing a sigh of relief with today's announcement. Full disclosure is that my advocacy started long before we even got pregnant with our daughter. I want to thank Majority Leader Lori Cumbo for her partnership, We have elected officials who live in their districts and have families precisely so they'll fight for the services for our children. I couldn't be prouder to have you on the council. I know I've been persistent about getting UPK and now 3K rolled out, but this was too important for our children's future to leave up to the next administration. Mayor de Blasio, I've been asking you for this for so many years. What will we talk about? What will we ask? Now, I'm only half kidding here because there's a laundry list, but in all seriousness, I want to thank Mayor de Blasio for staying true to his word and making universal pre-K a reality and now 3K for all by 2021. When we both have our vaccines and it is safe to do so, I'm going to walk over to Gracie and I'm going to give you, Mayor de Blasio, a big hug. When the mayor said he was yes to bringing 3K for citywide, I literally jumped for joy, sighed in relief. I know that getting it funded is only the first step and that finding sites, particularly in the Upper East Side and Manhattan, can be a challenge. You have my pledge that just as we did to secure 900 new pre-K seats before, I will work with parents, providers, and the real estate developers to build the seats we need in 6 months, and I'm counting on the mayor, Deputy Chancellor Wallach, and SCA to work miracles. Mayor de Blasio, you did something no one else even tried to do. You got universal pre-kindergarten done in the largest city in America. You brought it into the national dialogue, and now President Biden is taking the idea seriously. Now in your final year, you're taking another Herculean effort on by expanding 3K citywide. That's quite a legacy that will be felt by countless families, including mine, for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so kind of you, Councilmember, and thank you. And you have been an extraordinary advocate, and you're absolutely right. Your advocacy goes long, long before your own family grew. But thank you, because you said a really important thing there about we need everyone's help to make this come alive over these next 6 months. You will remember, Councilmember, the first 6 months of pre-K in 2014. Very exciting time, but to quote Lydia, nerve-wracking as well, as we were trying to find all the right space and make it work. Well, we're going to do it again with your help, Councilmember, and your colleagues, and we will find the space. And the team of the DOE has proven, and SCA, that they can do it, so we're going to have them do it one more time. But this is going to be really, we use the word game changer, maybe a little too much in life, but this one is a game changer. This changes families' lives. And we're just so excited. This is really a good day for this city. And with that, let me talk about today's indicators. Number one, daily number of people admitted to New York City hospitals for suspected COVID-19. Today's report is 248 patients, confirmed positivity level of 54.09%. Hospitalization rate, 3.79 per 100,000. Number two, new reported cases on a 7-day average. Today's report, 3,282. And number three, percentage of people testing positive citywide for COVID-19. Today's report on a 7-day rolling average, 6.36%. I'm going to say a few words in Spanish back on 3K. Hoy tenemos noticias increíbles para niños y padres en toda la ciudad de Nueva York. Estamos extendiendo la educación infantil gratuita 3K a todos los distritos escolares. Este es un gran logro para las familias trabajadoras. Así es como creemos una recuperación para todos. With that, let's turn to our colleagues in the media. And please let me know the name and outlet of each journalist.
We'll now begin our Q&A. As a reminder, we're joined today by Chancellor Porter, by Josh Wallach, the Deputy Chancellor for Early Childhood and Enrollment, by Dr. Choksi, Dr. Katz, and Senior Advisor Dr. Jay Varma. First question today goes to Andrew Siff from WNBC.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, and everyone on the call. Mayor, there's a new poll out in the mayor's race today that shows 50% of New Yorkers are undecided with less than 3 months to go until the primary. Does that number surprise you? What do you make of it?
It really doesn't surprise me, Andrew. Look, I think you've got a big field of candidates. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and folks are so focused on their own lives and taking care of their families. And there's, I think, a good reason why folks still have not been able to focus a lot yet. But, there's 3 months to go. There's certainly time for that to happen. It will happen, inevitably. But this one is developing more slowly, I think, than other elections we've seen. Go ahead, Andrew.
is on a different topic on behalf of my colleague, Sarah Wallace. This is about your Department of Correction. You have said that triple shifts by correction officers are unacceptable. We have documents that show there were 58 triple shifts at one jail last weekend. Is your commissioner ignoring your mandate? Are you prepared to commit to hiring more officers?
Look, we absolutely do not want triple shifts. There's no question about that. And I'm going to get an update today on why that was necessary in that situation. But we have, historically, as you know, we had a really substantial number of hires of correction officers because we used to have a real big issue with overtime. That's been much less of a problem now because the number of folks incarcerated has gone way down, and that's a good thing. But sometimes I think there are aberrant situations. We got to make those, very, very rare, if not never. So I don't want to see this going forward. I'll follow up on this today. And if we have to make some adjustments in terms of personnel to avoid the triple shifts, of course we will.
The next is Christina Vega from Chalkbeat.
Mayor, Chancellor, and
Hey, can you hear us, Christina?
yes, can you hear me?
You sounded real light. Just speak up a little bit.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
It's better. Okay. So my first question is, if the city can create 6,500 new 3K seats, why not address the persistent shortage of preschool special education seats that leaves certain families without services or instruction?
Well, Christina, we want to get to work on that too. Look, the goal here is always to be as universal as humanly possible. And as you remember, pre-K started in stages. 3K obviously started very small and built up. We want to reach every child in every way, but that will take some time to put the pieces together. So 3K will be in every single one of our 32 districts in September, but there's more work to be done to reach every child, and we will continue that work, and we'll have more to say on that soon. Go ahead, Christina.
Along those lines, how many slots would it take to reach universality? Like how close are we with this announcement? And can you break down how much you're spending and from what sources to get to this level of
Yeah, we're at about 25,000 kids in 3K now. We will be adding 15,000 seats for this September 2021, so it'll take us to 40,000 plus. We believe that the natural maximum here is something like 60,000, 61,000 kids. So we want that to keep building fast over the next year or two. And the budget will get you the updated figure, but adding this is a substantial investment. But again, as a matter of priorities, this is, to me, unquestionably one of the highest priorities we can have in this city, and certainly one of the highest priorities within education. If you get early child education right, everything else works. I'm going to turn to the Chancellor on this point because she is a lifetime educator. There's lots of choices to make, always within a budget. But what I've felt from the beginning is the investments in early childhood education, they have a profound impact on families, as you've heard. But they're also where we get the biggest impact for the dollars we spend on education. Because if you get that foundation right, all other things are possible. And Chancellor, could you speak to that?
Absolutely. So we absolutely understand how important it is to, ensure that we have services in place for our youngest students, particularly our students with IEPs. But ensuring that all of our students have a strong start will really be a game changer in this space. I spent my first morning as Chancellor in Brooklyn at PS 15 visiting first and second grade ICT classes. And so, again, this opportunity to expand 3K will become a game changer in that space. And starting earlier, starting younger is the best way to, make sure we are giving our students all of the foundational learning and understandings they need. Today is the first step, but we know we need to do more work in this area, and we will continue to do so.
Thank you.
The next is Sydney Pereira from Gothamist.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. So this morning, Public Advocate Jamani Williams and Councilmember Mark Levine, held a press conference calling for the governor to slow down the reopening and not move forward on some of the specific April changes that are coming with sports arenas and arts and entertainment venues. I know you've expressed similar concerns about how quickly the state is moving on reopening, and but I'm wondering, like, what specifically do you have to say about the reopenings coming in April with sports arenas and arts and entertainment venues? And is there anything the city could do to scale back or I guess encourage residents to just to not go along with the governor's reopening decisions? I know that you can't override the governor's decisions here, but I'm wondering what else could you do with the reopening decisions you do disagree with?
Sydney, I'll start and I'll turn to Dr. Varma and Dr. Choksi. Look, first, this is just such a clear example of why we need local control. We have some of the best health leaders in all of America right here in New York City. And they've been consistently clear about the fact that there's some things that can be done safely and other things that can't be at this point, especially while we still have the real questions about the variants. The state of New York should really defer to the health leadership in New York City on these matters. Once they make a decision, to your bigger point, Sydney, it's hard to tell people this is how you should or shouldn't respond to a decision by your own state government. But I think what we do consistently is say we're going to implement the decision our own way, which means a lot of public education on how to go about things the right way, a lot of inspections, obviously, and educating folks in each facility about the right way to do things. But where we have a particular concern right now is the fitness classes, which is, I think, the epitome of what not to do, because it's people involved in, intensive exercise, letting out their breath, in the middle of exercise, either not wearing a mask in some cases, or the mask that's gotten wet and therefore is compromised. And that just doesn't make sense. And additionally, throwing down the caution that we should not go past 50% with indoor dining. Those are two that really concern me. And we're going to keep, as we see each decision looming, talking about what we think makes sense. And if we think any decision that was previously made is no longer tenable because of the healthcare environment, we'll speak to that as well. Dr. Varma, you want to comment?
Just to echo the comments that you've made, we obviously there's the challenge of who regulates what things are open or not. And so from our perspective as health leaders, if we can't change sort of the regulatory environment over who's making decisions about what's open or not, we have to focus on what's also really important, which is educating New Yorkers about the best way to reduce their risk. And that's why every morning you hear and you see our public announcements, really focusing on those really critical measures that we all know are so important. So we would like to be in a setting where we have full local control, as the mayor said, over identifying what is a high-risk setting and how to regulate its operations. But in the absence of that, we want to make sure that New Yorkers have the most critical information, because we are still at this very tenuous time right now where we need to be fighting with all we have. And that includes getting vaccination, because there really is a prospect for things to improve in the very near future.
Thank you. Dr. Choksi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the question. And yes, you have heard some of our concerns with respect to the fact that we remain in a time where we have to be cautious and careful when it comes to COVID risk. We've talked about some of the things that contribute to COVID risk and how we can lessen it. Outdoors is better than indoors. Situations where you're able to wear a mask consistently and properly are better than those where you are not. And smaller groups are better than larger groups. So those are the things that we urge our fellow New Yorkers to take into consideration when they're thinking about their own risk. And as you've heard me say before, this is particularly true for people who may be at greater risk of severe outcomes from COVID-19. If you're older, if you have an underlying health condition, or if you have someone in your household who meets those criteria as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sydney.
Thank you. I have another question about schools from my colleagues. My colleagues are getting reports of high schoolers who are sitting in classrooms and watching a remote, an instructor remotely or virtually. And just with this new opt-in window and kind of the new 3-foot rule guidance, I'm wondering if the Department of Education and you are confident enough in staffing to provide an actual classroom experience, going forward.
It's a really good question, Sydney. I would say, first of all, we've talked about this very question yesterday at our meeting with senior members of the DOE leadership, and Chancellor and I talked through this point. I think it's important to say that the concerns about kids being in a classroom and doing remote work, well, first important to say even before the pandemic, sometimes kids were in a classroom doing online work, but much more germane to the current question. This doesn't really, from what we're aware of, is not really a pertinent issue in elementary school or middle school. It's a pertinent issue in some high schools, and it tends to be the biggest high schools. And the high schools that have the most comprehensive curricula, because that's where you have some of the problem, having a teacher available who has the particular subject background. And that's, of course, affected by how many teachers are on accommodation right now and not available in person. So there are some issues, but they're navigable issues. And it does not take away from the fact that a child is in school with the support of caring adults, professional educators, guidance counselors, you name it. I'll turn to the Chancellor, but just say to the question of where we go from here, clearly we have classrooms with a teacher in the classroom that could handle a lot more kids. The 6 feet rule created a real artificial reality where classrooms were very, very small size. And we undoubtedly can accommodate a lot more kids, just as we are now with the staffing we have now. And if we have to make some additional staffing adjustments or additions, we will. But I do think we have to keep in mind that the substantial number of teachers working from home because of accommodations is really at the core of some of this. Go ahead, Chancellor.
Yeah, I would agree with the mayor. I would also add that each school is working through their specific programming issues. But I also want to acknowledge that, what is happening in those cases is that there is an adult in the room working with a partner teacher. And I just want to acknowledge that our teachers are really working in partnership and collaboration when the specific content area teacher is not in the room to ensure that our students are getting the support that they need. Listen, I'm a high school parent. My own child, Jaden, is back in 10th grade, and she was so excited about just being back in school, just connecting with her teachers, just connecting with her classmates. And so part of this is about socialization, but we understand the need to ensure that we are wrapping ourselves around our students, and getting them back in school. And to the mayor's point, our lowest numbers are actually in high school. And so we feel confident that we'll be able to support more families coming back in.
Thank you. Go ahead.
The next is Aaron from Politico.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to ask about the Open Streets program. We had a story this week that a quarter of the open streets that were originally opened have since been closed and taken back by cars for a variety of reasons. Some because they rely on volunteers who just didn't really have the bandwidth to keep it up. Some because cars were just kind of not respecting the restrictions. So I'm basically just wondering, with your promise to make the program permanent and expand it, is there anything you can do to make sure that these streets, once they do open, are actually, can continue for the long term?
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I think obviously, the winter weather also affected the equation in terms of people wanting to be out. But we want to go back as we're getting ready for warmer weather again, figure out the right places for open streets, the right number. Yeah, we do need, there's a certain amount of staffing that goes with them. That has to happen. We got to sort that out. But I think we also found with everything we do, some places worked really great. Most places worked great. Some places didn't work as well as planned, and new options will be looked at. But I'm very confident that open streets is going to be a big part of this year in New York City and the future. It was an incredibly positive experience. And we just got to keep improving it and fine-tuning it as we go along. Go ahead, Aaron.
Thanks. And then I want to follow up on your announcement about city workers coming back to the office yesterday and clarify something, because the unions and some others have expressed concerns about, needing better safety regulations to make sure it's done safely. With regards to masks, I believe that you said, oh, well, there are some people who are just, off by themselves and not around anyone, and so they won't have to wear a mask. But with respect to, I think we're mostly talking about office workers here because the frontline people are already in person. So if you're in a setting where you're in an office and there are other people in the office and the desks are 6 feet apart, do you have to wear a mask? Is that mandatory or not? And if not, why not?
No, it is mandatory. We needed to do a better job of clarifying that. I'm glad you raised it. We'll make sure the written guidance is really clear. People have to wear masks in offices, period. We were referring to the fact there are some aberrant situations where, you could have a late shift or something where there's very few people around. But the basic rule is clear. Folks coming back, city workers coming back to serve the city, we want to keep them safe, we want to keep each other safe. Of course they have to wear masks. Go ahead.
The next is Sean from the Daily News.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I wanted to get your latest thoughts on the situation in Albany. In a little bit, Governor Cuomo is going to take... Okay, I apologize for the webpage that sprang up. Governor Cuomo...
This just proves it's live TV. Go ahead, Sean.
Totally. The casualties of multitasking. Governor Cuomo in a little bit is taking questions from reporters for the first time in a while. What do you want to hear from him at this point in time?
I've been clear. I think he should resign so we can move forward in this state. But I'm not expecting him to do that today. So the next thing he should do is resume normal democracy, restore democracy in the state of New York, restore local control so we can move forward. I am concerned that some of the decisions he's made lately, I think, are more and more about politics than about the health of our people. Well, the way to resolve that is to restore local control. Let us make the decisions for our own people. We are moving slowly but surely out of this pandemic. It's time for democracy to come back in the state of New York. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, thanks for that. And switching gears, I understand undocumented workers have been doing a hunger strike for some days now, trying to draw attention to lack of funding in the federal stimulus and in the state budget for them. Just seeing a hunger strike, very drastic gesture. What do you make of that situation?
It's very moving. It's very sad that folks who are trying to take care of their families are led to a situation where they feel that's their only choice. I mean, look, this is the American problem. There's 12 million people here, and we're not acknowledging it and not being honest about it as a nation in terms of our laws and our policies. There's 12 million people who are Americans because they're here as part of our communities. They need a pathway to citizenship now. We need comprehensive immigration reform, and we should provide support so families can remain whole, which is why in this city, we don't ask documentation status. We do provide a variety of support, including guaranteed health care for folks who happen to be undocumented. Folks are going through a lot. They need help, and we're going to try and figure out every way we can help them, notwithstanding the problems of the federal laws.
The next is Matt Chase from Newsday.
Hey, good morning, all. How you doing?
Good. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for asking. Dr. Chakshi, under the door-to-door vaccination plan you described for the J&J shot, will a senior of color be more likely to get a door knock from a vaccinator than a senior who's white?
So before Dr. Chokshi goes, and I'll turn to him, Matt, I know you like to ask these yes and no questions. I just want to affirm, first of all, it's not just someone knocks on your door and says, hey, I have a needle here. It's we do the appointments, obviously. We encourage people to get vaccinated. We have door-to-door efforts to sign people up, and a lot of people are signing up on their own or their loved ones are. as with everything, we're focusing our efforts on where COVID hit hardest, which was in communities of color. But it is about individual willingness to sign up. And that's the X factor. You can't mandate. You're not saying to someone, we're going to vaccinate you whether you want it or not. It's about who chooses at this point to be vaccinated. And that is something that's open to people of all backgrounds. Go ahead, Dr. Choksi.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll just build briefly on what you said. First and foremost, this is about outreach and making sure that we are getting people through our canvassing, through our phone calls, through all of the different channels that we have to engage, the people who will most benefit from vaccination, and that includes through our homebound program. Specifically for people who are homebound, this involves collaboration and outreach with NYCHA, with our Department for the Aging, including naturally occurring retirement communities. So we do take very seriously our obligation to ensure that we're maximizing access through that type of outreach. And as the mayor has emphasized, not just today, but over the course of our vaccination campaign, that includes putting the hardest hit neighborhoods and particularly communities of color at the center of our efforts. I'll just add one more note to this as a doctor, which is that unfortunately, when you think about the people who are homebound, who are disabled or may have less mobility because of chronic conditions like diabetes or cardiovascular disease, unfortunately, those burdens have disproportionately been borne by communities of color as well. It's one of the reasons that we felt so strongly about bringing vaccination to people who are unable to come to the sites that we have set up.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Matt.
For the record, there was no yes or no there, but I got another question for you. Earlier this month, you said someone who commits hateful but non-criminal conduct could be visited by the NYPD. Do you still stand by that? And if so, has the NYPD begun conducting these activities? And if not, when will they begin?
So again, the whole idea there, let me make sure it's clear. We have a lot of folks who say, I don't know whether I should report something that happened to me or something I witnessed. And what I've been trying to say is, please report whatever you see. If you think it might be a hate crime, if you think it was an act of bias, report it. We're not asking the average resident to be a lawyer here and know exactly what fits each definition. So again, a reminder to everyone, you can go to nyc.gov/stopasianhate and report any incident you see. My point about NYPD is they're going to investigate anything that might be a hate crime. And sometimes it will turn out it doesn't rise to that definition. But still, something happened, and it's important that it be investigated. And it's important that if someone is acting out of bias and trying to do something hurtful to another fellow New Yorker, that they know that that investigation is going to happen, that they know it's going to be looked at. So any complaint we get that might involve a crime, of course, is going to be fully investigated by the NYPD. Go ahead.
We have time for two more for today. The next is Juan Manuel from New York One.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Good, Juan Manuel. How you been?
Very good, thank you. A couple of days ago, you had some issues with the indicators, some trouble with the state data. Is that now resolved? And also, can you tell us again why the numbers the state is providing for New York City in terms of COVID-19 cases, not cases, but positivity numbers and stuff like that, why are they so different from the cities?
Sure. I'll turn to Dr. Choksi, and yes, the technical issues, the data issues have been resolved. He can speak to that. But to the bigger point, look, I think this fits perfectly, Juan Manuel, with the question of restoring democracy, restoring local control. You know, I always appreciate, and I like to remember the people who, for each of us in our lives, made so many things possible. And one of those people for me was Deputy Mayor Bill Lynch, who I worked for about 30 years ago in this building. And he would always say, God bless the child who has his own. We in New York City, we have to have our own information. we have to have our own data. We have to protect our own people. The CDC today, Juan Manuel, we can respect the professionalism, we can respect the objectivity. There is not political interference, but we all know during the Trump administration, a lot of times the healthcare leadership was being compromised and threatened and limited. So we didn't even know if federal information was accurate. The state of New York has their own methodology, and we don't always agree that it's the most rigorous methodology. Sometimes I am concerned that it might be a more subjective methodology, or there might be political considerations in the data. We want the data to tell us the whole truth. We want to be led by the data and science. So the New York City Department of Health, which is respected all over the country, has a rigorous methodology, and we believe that is the most accurate read of what's happening in New York City. And we're going to stick by it, because if we have the facts, we can protect our people. But we're not going to depend on anyone else to understand the facts of New York City. We'll do that for ourselves. Go ahead, Dr. Choksi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And yes, first on the technical issue, I will confirm that has been resolved. The daily indicators and the vaccination data on our website are being refreshed this morning as per the usual schedule, and the rest of our public website will be refreshed this afternoon, which is also our regular cadence. So we've worked through those issues that were originally a problem with some of the state data coming through to us, and so that is all resolved. It gives me a chance to say how grateful I am to the health department's data team, which has been working night and day throughout this pandemic, in particular, to give us what you've heard me characterize as the lifeblood of our COVID-19 response. Everyone from the mayor on down looks at these indicators, not just daily, but sometimes multiple times a day, so that we can understand the trajectory of this pandemic and make the critical decisions to protect New Yorkers based on that data. And just as was said, we will always follow the most rigorous scientific standards in figuring out how to analyze the data and communicate it to New Yorkers.
Thank you. Go ahead, Juan Manuel.
So just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, do you or your health department think Governor Cuomo or his health department are cooking the numbers?
I would say, and I'll let Dr. Choksi speak for himself, I would say I believe our numbers are more accurate and more consistent, and I know our numbers are based on objective science, and I can't say that about the state. Go ahead, Dr. Choksi.
Thank you. And, I can't speak for the state health department, of course. I would take a step back and just make it clear that when we look at the trends, with respect to cases, percent positivity, hospitalizations, those are the things that are most important to follow. And, despite some of the nuances and the differences between the data, those trends often tell a very similar story. And so that's what we should focus on to make those critical decisions that I mentioned.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Last question today goes to Nolan from The Post.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
How you doing, Nolan?
I'm all right, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
A good day, Nolan. It's a good day. I was with 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. I'm feeling hopeful.
Oh, that's good to hear. You've been asked if the Department of Education would be able to report how many kids are actually getting in-person instruction in city schools. You've said that number is constantly changing, so it doesn't make sense to release it. The city releases all kinds of stats that are regularly updated, whether it's the testing stats for coronavirus or crime stats from the New York City Police Department, or even attendance stats from city schools. So what's the holdup in telling the public just how many kids are actually getting in-person instruction with schools reopened?
No, Nolan, look, it's a good question. I want to make sure, I think, first of all, yes, we should get more information out on this, but we should make sure it's accurate in what is literally an ever-changing environment with our schools. But what we can do is this. As I said, this, from everything I've seen, is not an issue at the elementary school level or the middle school level in any meaningful way. It is a problem with larger high schools in particular. We talked about this at Department of Education yesterday, how to get more comprehensive data together on this and how to continue to address it. If it's a subject expert who's at home on accommodation, but they're needed to teach that subject in a school, of course that child is going to learn online even if they're in the classroom. But as you heard the chancellor say, with the support of a teacher in the classroom as well. But whatever specifics we can pull together to give you and others a sense of exactly the shape of this, we should do that. And that's something I'm happy to see us do. Go ahead.
Secondly, your administration has made changes to the city's transportation infrastructure a hallmark of your recovery and reopening vision. You've promised at one point to help encourage people to get back on the subway, to help encourage people to start riding again. You said you would ride yourself. Now you're vaccinated. You haven't taken your promised week of subway trips yet. Do you plan to do that? And secondly, your Department of Transportation has promised to overhaul how bikes can use the Brooklyn Bridge by July. Will you promise to ride whatever bike infrastructure exists on the Brooklyn Bridge by the end of July?
Yes and yes. I will happily. I'm really looking forward because we need that change on the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm looking forward to that day, and I will happily participate on a bike for sure. And yes, the subway trips, I'm looking forward to that too. And it's something I think is important. We obviously saw last week the highest ridership in the subways we've seen since the beginning of the pandemic. I think you're going to see more and more people coming back. I want to encourage it, and certainly we'll be out there showing that. So we'll schedule that soon. So everyone, look, today is a day, I'm just got to say, it really does do your heart good to be out in a school with, first of all, educators. I just want to thank all the educators, everyone who we saw today who, just they love the kids. They want to be there for the kids, and that's inspiring to see the adults who are there for kids and look out for kids, but the kids themselves are the ultimate inspiration. And every time I spend time with those 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds, it just reminds you of what's possible. While we were reading the story or listening to the story being read, what was the animal called again?
It was the
Gruffalo?
The Gruffalo.
The Gruffalo. I was looking at the faces of the children, and the focus, when you see what 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds can do, the way they can learn. We say they're like sponges. Well, the science would say that they're at the point of greatest intellectual development in our lifetimes. It happens in those first years of life, and when you're watching these kids, they're just focused, they're feeling it, they're so energized about it. The children bragging to us about what they could say in Spanish, even though it wasn't their native language, and showing what they could do, the addition they could do. It was just beautiful and hopeful. And it was also a vision of equality, because every child had the same opportunity. Didn't matter where they lived, didn't matter what their ethnic or racial background was, or how much money their family had in their bank account. Every single child had the same exact opportunity, and that's what we believe in. That's our values coming to life. So it was a beautiful moment. It's the shape of things to come in this city. It's the shape of a recovery for all of us. We saw it today in East Flatbush, Brooklyn, and you're now going to see the same thing in all 32 school districts of New York City. And that's something to celebrate. Thank you, everybody.